There are three stages. Imagine you're walking, you're minding your own business, you don't really have very many curiosities or desires, but someone tells you something and it just sounds so attractive and enticing. And so you ask for directions and they give it to you. And that's the first step, that you make a journey towards the thing you desire. Now, you don't really know what it is. All you know is that you want to find out where God is, or if you want to connect this to the poem by Ansari, you want to know what the self is. There is a great amount of fantasy in any journey. You pack up and you get yourself ready to go to Los Angeles, but not really ready for a flat tire. You're not really ready for an engine kind of just breaking down. You're not ready for the kids screaming. And the journey sounds really, really good. You haven't really been tried. You're basically driving, and for the most part it's comfortable. Now, all the complexities aside, depending on what exactly it is that you want. If you want milk and you have some in the fridge, you'll get some. It's going to take you a couple seconds. If you have no milk in the fridge in the kitchen and you have a fridge in the garage like we do, it takes about a minute. If you don't have a fridge in the kitchen or the garage, then you have to journey to Safeway, which is about half hour going and coming. And that also depends on what time it is. If it's midnight and all the stores are closed and you have a 2-year-old on your hand, well, there is no milk and you're going to have this kid just screaming in your ears the entire night. So all those complexities aside, the first path is you journeying towards God, or you journeying towards the self, or you journeying towards this thing called strength. You just want to be strong enough so that just in case life touches you in a mean way, in a difficult way, it will never have the power to break you, to shatter you. Once you get to the destination, you have to knock, and you have no idea when the host is going to open the door. So you make all this journey to get to this destination, and you knock on the door, but you have to wait and wait and wait and wait for someone to open the door. And you have to be strong enough. You have to be ambitious enough. You have to be obsessed enough. You have to be infatuated, maybe even in love with the thing you're looking for or searching. That desire will give you enough strength. The strength will give you enough patience that you're more than willing to sacrifice your time, your life, your energy to stand by the door until someone opens it. Once the door opens, if you haven't given up, it's like entering the twilight zone. You have no idea what's inside the door, what's inside this place. And so first it was your journey going from point A to point B, and you've reached point B. You knock on point B and the door opens and you walk in. And you have no idea how the things that you witness are going to make you feel. And I don't think anyone is strong enough to, once the door is opened unto them, to go through all the bedrooms, to go through all the living rooms, all the kitchens. We just don't have the time or the patience or the strength to journey through all the spaces that this space has. There is a really wonderful metaphor in the book of Job that when you enter this house, you will encounter a lot of mansions, which is a really strange thing to say or to encounter in the book of Job. How could you enter a house and find a mansion? Usually you go into a mansion and you find the house. Mansions are supposed to be grand and huge, and houses are supposed to be relatively small. When you are looking for something and you find its door and you knock and the host opens and you walk through it, you're so mesmerized by what you see that you don't look at the host and ask him, "So how are you? Can I help with anything?" You basically ask, "Can you walk me through your house or your mansion? Can I see what exactly you have?" And it's so huge. And of course, a good host will always oblige and say, "Yes, of course, I will kind of walk you through and so you can take a look at my house." And you enter, the house around 6, and you've gone through 5 bedrooms, and you've gone through 20 living rooms and 50 kitchens. One of those houses that athletes or very, very rich people buy. And it's like Disney World or Disneyland. It doesn't matter how many days you spend there, it just never gets over. And then you get exhausted, and you look at the host and you say, "I need to go home now." And the host says, "Okay." But the third journey is incomplete, which is the third step at least. So the first step is you journeying towards the self, or you journeying towards wisdom, or you journeying towards God. The second is you find God, you find wisdom, you find strength, and you knock on its door and the door is opened, and now you kind of walk through it to discover what lives in it. But God or the self or wisdom keeps waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting until you become wise enough to know your own capacity to stop asking for things that are really beyond you. And once you stop, the third step comes in, which is wisdom now journeys through you. It's very much the poem of Ansari. That there was this stage I was in where I was looking for myself. And I kept looking and looking and looking and looking, and I found God. And I came to a different place where I didn't really want to look for God. I wanted to look for myself. And I kept looking and looking and looking, and the only thing I saw was God. You know, it's so rare. I mean, once in a while something really interesting happens. You know that you have to teach on a Friday from 9 to 12, and you prepare and you do all that stuff. And it's your journeying towards the 9 o'clock class. The class starts and you're kind of exploring and experimenting with all of your notes. How am I going to tell the students? How are they going to respond? Of the complexities of this particular time in history, what components, what sort of information do I want to impart to my students? Then around 11 o'clock, something really interesting happens from nowhere. There's no warning. It doesn't, tell you in advance that it's going to come pay you a visit. Something about you just shuts down in a very, very healthy way. And let's say you're talking about the Renaissance, or let's say you're talking about Brahman, whatever the case may be. It's like this thing, the host, the thing that you're talking about, in some strange way silences you and now enters inside you and speaks through you. That's the third stage, and that's what most of us really desire. That we want someone, ourselves, our fantasies, our pathetic desires to kind of quiet down and maybe disappear completely, so that whatever it is, hopefully something noble that we have sought and finally we have found, instead of us journeying through it to figure out what it is and how it functions and how it smells and how it tastes, that perhaps that which we've been looking and that which we have found, maybe we can allow it to roam through us and figure out where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, and use us the way it finds fit. It's the way it sees fit. We have all experienced it, whether we have fallen in love romantically or otherwise, whether we walk into a classroom and initially the conversation or the lecture or what we're telling students is relatively mechanical and technical, and it deals with SLOs and ILOs, all those nonsense that modern education shoves instructors' throats. But at a certain point in the classroom, something about you opens up. It may be that I suppose all human beings have the capacity and the strength to kind of hold something as grand and powerful as, say, wisdom or the self or God or Atman, whatever it is you want to call it, doesn't really make much of a difference. But not too many human beings have the physical privilege. They're not a prince like the Buddha. They're not a prince like Mahavira or Moses. They're not in a privileged position like Jesus, who are able to kind of turn their backs to the things that most of us need. We need money, we need a companion, we need children, we need to be close to our parents, we need friendships. And though perhaps the potential may be there for most of us, the truth is not very many of us have the ability to make sacrifices, especially sacrificing. The idea of having a big ego, which means that you think very highly about yourself, which is for the most part a very fallacious way of viewing yourself. You've done nothing in your life. You've read a couple of books, and you thought that just because you've read Nietzsche or the Gospels that you actually understand these ideas. So you have these great ideas about yourself, and someone like Gurdjieff or any person of wisdom comes your way, and the first thing they do is they sit back and observe, how you speak and the way, what you say. And then they begin to ask you some questions to see whether or not you're able to kind of just sacrifice by just keeping your mouth shut. I think this particular passage in the Quran really, like anything else in life, it's a message, and the message is out there on the microphone, coming through the speakers. Everybody can hear it, but not really everyone is able to listen to what it is that they're hearing. And not everyone is able to understand what they're listening to. And not everyone is able to put what they listen into application for themselves. And not everyone is able to put to application what they have applied to themselves, to society at large. And so there are all these different steps that happen. There are all these different journeys that you have to go through.